How's it going, everyone? Jiivita here with a release overview for testing 232. This adds closed storage and new decorative blocks, as well as some really nice quality of life. If you don't actually consider the closed storage a huge quality of life just right there. But let's just kind of jump in here. So right off the bat, we have 4 new types of storage thingies, blocks, whatever you want to call them, and yeah, they are closed as opposed to the open versions, which are these storage blocks right here. The open just meaning that if you put something in them, you can see what's in them without having to open it up. So now we have closed versions, which is basically kind of like your standard chest or box that you would see in other types of games, and they come in lots of different sizes. They range all the way from basically 8 slots all the way up to 40 slots. So I added some kind of visual guides here of what each one of these is worth in terms of storage cubes. So currently, like I said, we have just the 4, but they'll be stone, wood, there's even like a subset of like farming that's, I guess, comes even before stone and wood, but then the metal and gleam as well. So we have the full set of wood. It comes in the plain, stylish, and ornate, kind of like doors, beams, and poles. We have the plain stone, but we're missing the stylish and ornate, and of course the metal and gleam, and then there's also the farming subset as well. So all of this to say that we don't quite have the one that is 40 spaces just yet. Currently we go up to 32. But that is just a massive improvement over anything we've had previously. So you could use like request baskets and shop stands, and that would give you these first 2 rows of storage. But then it had the qualifier of like, well, the shop stands, you could only put 1 type of item in there, which had its pros and cons, kind of forced some organization. You could also use the request baskets and you could mix and match items together. However, you couldn't shift click them into it, only out of it. So it was, you know, you kind of had to pick your poison. Do you want to be able to shift click items back and forth, but you can only put 1 item type in there, or you can have multiple item types, but then you have to like click and drag every single item down there. So now you can mix and match and put whatever you want in here. It doesn't actually load the contents until you try to open it, so each time you open it up there will be like a slight, you know, kind of loading contents, but once you've accessed it, it is cached, so you don't have to load it again. I think if you leave the area, you might have to load it again, but as you can see, it really doesn't take long at all. So here, one of these should have, yeah, quite a bit more stuff in there. And not bad at all. You might could use maybe some signs or shop stands or some way to kind of denote what each box is for, but certainly just a little bit of organization can save you a lot of opening and closing boxes. But very, very nice. I'll throw up some of the concept art for the other tiers, the kind of what they're calling farming, and then stone, wood, the metal. There's one that actually looks like kind of like cabinets that looks really nice, and of course the gleam always looks very nice as well. But moving along, let's kind of go over some of the more quality of life things. For one thing, you can now have signs of many colors, or one sign made of many different types of signs. They do have to be the same type, so you can't like mix and match stone and metal together, but as you can see, all of these metal sign modules will connect together to make one sign, even though they're made out of different materials. Same for the sign over here. Apparently you could do this with like spray tinting. However, under certain circumstances, it could actually like crash the server. So now it's just supported up front, and you don't have to like spray tint. You can just take the different color sign modules and they'll snap together as normal. The other really amazing quality of life that any crafter will appreciate is now all you have to do is repair 1 connected machine to repair everything that is connected to it. So in other words, if I want to repair this chrysominter, I can just hit the chrysominter and it will repair all of the coils at the same time. If you look over here, each one of these is being repaired for 77 conditions. So in other words, it's taking that 700 repair value from the spanner and dividing it between the 8 coils in the one machine. So naturally, it's going to take a while for this iron spanner, but where this will really come in handy is like you can now use the specialized spanners and even like super forge them, and with just a few hits you'll be able to repair all of it without really wasting much of anything. Another really nice thing is that the spanners, at least for the time being, are fixed in that if you're not actually repairing something, it won't use durability. So right now, this diamond spanner is at, let's see here, 1992. And if I just kind of repair the ground here for a while, open it back up, and we're still at 1992. So very, very nice. This has been implemented, I think it was implemented all the way back in early access, and at some point it broke and then they fixed it again and then it broke again. So you might keep an eye on this, as it kind of breaks and gets fixed over the patches. It might have been fixed for a while now. It's not necessarily fixed in this patch. But as long as it stays fixed, that would make a spanner a really nice loot magnet, since it'd be easier to forge than, say, a totem, but you don't have to worry about accidentally hitting things and losing durability needlessly. So really, really nice feature right here. Moving along, we now have 18 new blocks to play with, or block types rather, because each one can come into all the different colors that's at least available to it. And yeah, that's just kind of crazy. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the one update that has, at least up to this point, added the most new blocks all at once. So that is pretty cool just right there. First off, we now have concrete. So this bottom one is just, I guess your basic concrete. That's also what this floor is made out of. And it's just a very kind of muted, very simplistic, minimalistic block. Should be really nice for anybody that's just like, I just want a solid color of this color without a whole lot of texture. So now there's a great option. It can take on the color of any of the stones, so that's going to be a lot of different color options right there. There's also a kind of a decorative, or I think it's called patterned concrete. Yeah, it's called patterned concrete. Looks really nice, and this stark orange patterned concrete goes just about perfectly with titanium over here. It's a slight color difference, but just kind of the pattern of the glowy lights with the titanium door looks really nice. Moving along, there's two types of mosaics. So we have this kind of linear or ordered mosaic right here. There's then the fish scale, along with, of course, the regular mosaic. So here's a little bit more of it kind of set into the floor. And basically, all of these recipes to make, these blocks are still a work in progress. So I'm not going to go in too much detail of all of the recipes, but there's kind of a new progression inside of these materials. So like one will be easier to make than the next one, and then it increases in difficulty. So far the mosaic is kind of based off of the bonding agent. So this ordered one will use just like regular bonding agent, and then this one will be like enriched, and then the current, or the mosaic we already have, is the super enriched. So that kind of adds a nice little progression to it. But moving along, we now have Decorative Glean. It's currently made out of refined gleam, so you don't have to like go through the progression of gleam, refined, and then like lanterns, and then turn it into decorative. But that also means that it's not innately better than the gleam lanterns. So if you're looking at it from the standpoint of farming, the max range that it'll grow crops, the lanterns will go 7 meters for the full speed, I suppose, and then it cuts off at 13 meters. Whereas the Decorative Glean, you only get up to 6 meters of full growth. It has the same cutoff as 13 meters. However, you look at this, it's like 53 weeks in order to mature. So which is quite a bit slower than the lantern. So not necessarily going to be replacing all of your lights for farming purposes, but certainly for decorative purposes, they look really nice. And moving along, essentially we have two new types of marble, which that's not really an accurate statement, but first off we have this kind of bordered marble right here, which kind of puts me in a mind of like Roman or Greek pillars, but then we also have these awesome kind of glyph things, and each one of these is its own block, so it's not like it's one block and you place it here and it changes the little character as you place blocks. You can actually, like, say if I wanted this welcome guy over here, I could just break it and put it over here. So very, very nice, and kind of has, like, I don't know, it reminds me of almost Egyptian hieroglyphs, but then, you know, they don't look anything like Egyptian, so kind of tribal pictograms or something. Very, very nice, and should kind of aid in getting that kind of temple, ancient temple kind of vibe. So next up we have kind of these trellises, so you can have one that doesn't have anything on it, but then you can also have versions with all the different types of foliage and even molds. So it's basically this wood frame, and you can have the wood frame or you can have leaves come out of it if you want kind of that more like, oh, it's a vine growing on like a lattice type thing. So kind of made some interesting little archways over here with some nice lighting. And yeah, had a lot of fun making this one actually. But honestly, I wasn't too sure about this block until I started working with it, and it's really kind of grown on me. And if you use the new lattice chisel, you can make some pretty interesting looking doodads. So this right here is the mold. I'm just kind of experimenting, showing that you can still have the little mold thingy right there, leaflet thing, and it's pretty interesting. And naturally, if it looks like water can flow through it, then, well, water can actually kind of coexist with the block or flow through it. You can also make a kind of an interesting ramp or staircase with flowing water flowing essentially through the block. But jumping back over here, we now have three new types of metal. These are all made, at least currently, out of refined versions of whatever it is. So you're going to use, you know, for the silver filigree, you're going to use the refined silver. But yeah, we now have a kind of octagon kind of grid or grate type thing, the filigree right here, and then finally the circuit board, and that's, I believe, kind of the progression of it. Each one currently uses something a little bit more advanced, and I think it goes through the same kind of bonding agent progression as well. So, but I saw this kind of grate type stuff, and the first thing I thought of was kind of like this catway right here. So had a lot of fun making this. The rail was interesting, and yeah, just kind of fun to play around with. And then last but certainly not least, we now have Decorative Ice. So I'm actually just now noticing that there are different versions of these little snowflakes. But yeah, you can actually use ice for something more than just slides now. So let's just kind of take a look. So yeah, lots of different kind of variations on the snowflakes. That's really cool. But this bottom one is just a color I gave myself, and then these top three colors, these are actually colors that should be available on the planets. I know this one is on Hochus 1, and these other two, I don't quite remember where they are, but I got the color codes off of the color spreadsheet, so they should be available. And there's not currently a recipe, but I feel like it should be safe to assume that the color would be determined by the ice, but who knows, it could be determined by an added ingredient, giving us much more color options, which actually brings me back around to the mosaic, in that The mosaic is now gravel based, so the color is actually determined by the gravel, and that had some people really concerned because that kind of limits the number of colors mosaic can come in. And James kind of mentions like, oh, well, we can just add a recipe that you can take rock and crush it up into gravel, which will essentially give you 4 colors for mosaic for each planet that's in the Boundless universe, because there's the 3 colors of rock plus a color of gravel, so that will be really nice. Not to mention a nice quality of life for just recipes in general that require gravel, because previously you'd have to go out and actually gather some gravel. Now you can just take some of your rock and turn it into gravel, so very, very nice right there. And coming around to one of the final major changes of this patch, it kind of is a modification to the plot reservation system. So if you're not familiar with it, you turn on beacon view, you can see essentially this kind of grid thing that represents your beacon in all the different plots. So each little square is a plot. But the change is that now roads will not reserve the plots around them. If you're unfamiliar with what a road is it's basically any of these plots that are colored in with a little bit of red. They're kind of skinny connections, and the settlement system kind of looks at it as like, oh, that's a road, we shouldn't connect settlements together, and now it's been expanded to not reserve plots. The basis for this is that it was a little too easy for players to reserve massive amounts of space using really very little plots. But as you can see, you can still do essentially the same thing. You'll just have to double up on your plots or make a 2 wide chain of plots to then be able to reserve this area. So these non-filled in squares, those are the reserved plots. Nobody can actually build there, but they are technically still wild. Players can still come and harvest resources. They just can't plot it or beacon it for themselves. Okay, well, I think that covers all of the major changes. They did do some work on the lighting system. Basically, there's an issue in certain situations in like really skinny walls or chiseled walls. There could be some really weird lighting kind of bleeding in from outside your build to the inside. Supposedly that's kind of fixed now. They also kind of optimized some things, removed some settings like the smooth normals that kind of tried to round the edges of blocks. It was actually a really expensive setting to turn on, and they decided to just kind of chunk it. But suffice to say, there's kind of 3 major changes that should improve performance essentially across the board. Also, the different levels of per pixel rendering was removed. Basically, it performed at max better than the short range now that the smooth normals was removed. So that's actually pretty cool. So there was really little point of having the short distance per pixel rendering, as it had less performance or poorer performance than its counterparts. Okay, well, I think that covers testing 232 quite nicely. I can't wait to get a hold of this update. The closed storage will be amazing. Essentially, I'll be able to cut out half of the shop stands I'm currently using for storage, since these ornate wood chests will hold the same amount as 2 shop stands. Not only that, you can mix and match items into them. The repairing of the coils through the machine itself, this is something I've been waiting for or hoping for a very long time. You can now seal away your coils if you don't want to see them, or you can put them behind glass and not have to worry about, oh, how am I going to repair that later when I need to be able to get to them. That's just going to be a huge quality of life. Not to mention, it'll save you on spanners as well if you're using like the really fancy gem spanners or something that are highly forged. You won't have to worry about essentially all that extra repair going to waste if you're hitting something like the base machine, or if one hit over repairs the coil. So yeah, that is really nice. Not to mention all the crazy new building materials. That's going to open up a lot of new possibilities. So I can't wait to see what the community does with all these new building materials. And yeah, even the basic storage just looks really nice. Not to mention later we're going to get even more variety or material types, and I just really like how there's like, you know, these tool handles sticking out of this barrel. That looks like a gem something or another right there, and maybe some more basic ones. But very, very nice. Can't wait to get my hands on it. Before I ramble on for another 5 hours, this was Jiivita. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and if there's anything you didn't like, please let me know down below. And if you like my channel and want to get cool perks, check out my Patreon page. Until next time, peace.